The rain hit the bus stop like tiny bullets, cold and sharp against the dark Chicago street. A homeless man sat on the bench, shivering under a torn blanket while dozens of people walked past him without even looking. Then a young woman stopped, even though her own world was falling apart. What nobody knew was that just 3 hours earlier, she had lost everything. Before we begin, if stories about kindness, hope, and real human connection touch your heart, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Welcome to Kindness Story Hub, where one small act of kindness can change a life forever. Emma Carter stood outside the office building with a cardboard box in her arms and tears burning in her eyes. Inside the box were 20 years of her life. A coffee mug with a faded smiley face. A framed picture of her and her son. A small plant she watered every morning before work. 20 years. Gone in 10 minutes. "We're restructuring," her manager had said without even meeting her eyes. "I'm sorry, Emma." Sorry. That word meant nothing now. Emma walked slowly through downtown Chicago while people rushed around her holding umbrellas and coffee cups. Nobody noticed the 52-year-old woman trying not to break down in the middle of the sidewalk. Her phone buzzed again. It was another hospital bill for her son Tyler. Tyler was only 19, but cancer had already stolen a year of his life. Emma had spent every dollar she had trying to keep him alive. She worked double shifts, sold her jewelry, even emptied her retirement savings. And now she didn't even have a job. The rain grew heavier as she reached the bus stop. That was when she saw him. An older homeless man sat quietly at the edge of the bench. His beard was soaked with rainwater, and his hands trembled from the cold. People walked around him like he didn't exist. Emma looked down at the $20 in her wallet. It was all she had until unemployment checks arrived, if they even arrived. She stared at the money for a long moment. Then she walked to the nearby food cart and bought 2 hot dogs and a coffee. The man looked shocked when she handed him the food. "You need this more than me," he whispered. Emma forced a small smile. "Maybe we both need it." The man's eyes filled with tears. "You're kind," he said softly. "Not many people stop anymore." Emma sat beside him while rain poured from the gray sky. "My mom used to say kindness costs nothing," she said quietly. The man chuckled weakly. "Your mom was wrong." Emma looked confused. He lifted the coffee cup carefully in his shaking hands. "Real kindness costs something," he said. "That's why it matters." Those words stayed in Emma's mind long after the bus arrived. When she got home, the apartment felt colder than usual. Tyler was asleep on the couch, pale and thin under a blanket. The chemo treatments had drained the energy from his body, but he still smiled whenever he saw her. "You're home early," he said weakly as he opened his eyes. Emma forced another smile. "Yeah. Thought we could watch a movie tonight." She didn't tell him about losing her job. Not yet. Tyler noticed the sadness in her face anyway. "Mom," he said gently, "what happened?" Emma sat beside him and finally broke down. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she explained everything. Tyler listened quietly. Then, despite being sick and exhausted, he reached over and held her hand. "We'll survive," he whispered. Emma shook her head. "I'm tired, Tyler." "I know. I keep trying to be strong for everyone, but I'm falling apart." Tyler smiled softly. "You know what's funny," he said. "Even when life keeps hurting you, you still help people." Emma thought about the homeless man at the bus stop. "I don't know why I do it anymore." "Because that's who you are." For the next few weeks, life became even harder. Emma searched for jobs every day, but nobody wanted to hire a middle-aged woman in a struggling economy. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter like mountains she couldn't climb. Still, every morning on her way to interviews, she stopped at the same bus stop. And every morning, the homeless man was there. His name was Walter. Sometimes Emma brought him coffee. Sometimes just a sandwich. Sometimes only a smile and a short conversation. One freezing morning, Walter noticed Emma rubbing her hands together for warmth. Without saying a word, he removed his old wool gloves and handed them to her. Emma frowned. "Walter, no. You need these." He smiled. Kindness goes both ways. For the first time in weeks, Emma laughed. It was small, but real. Days turned into months. Then one terrible evening, Tyler collapsed at home. Emma rushed him to the hospital while fear tightened around her chest like a rope. Doctors moved quickly through the emergency room while Emma sat alone in the waiting area praying harder than she ever had before. Hours later, a doctor approached her. "We need to start a new treatment immediately," he explained carefully. "But your insurance situation?" Emma already knew. She couldn't afford it. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. That night, she sat outside the hospital crying into her hands while snow fell softly around her. Then she heard a familiar voice. "Emma." She looked up in shock. Walter stood there wearing a clean winter coat. But he looked different. Cleaner. Healthier. Behind him stood a younger man in a business suit. Emma wiped her tears. "Walter." Walter smiled warmly. "I've been looking for you." Emma stared at him in confusion. The younger man stepped forward. "My name is Daniel Brooks," he said. "Walter is my father." Emma blinked in disbelief. "What?" Daniel nodded. "My father was once the owner of Brooks hardware stores across Illinois. After my mother died, he fell into depression. He walked away from everything. For years, we couldn't find him." Emma looked back at Walter, stunned. Walter lowered his eyes. "I wanted to disappear," he admitted quietly. "Most people treated me like I already had." "But you didn't," Daniel said while looking at Emma. Emma's heart pounded. Daniel continued speaking. "My father told us about the woman who kept helping him even when she was struggling herself. He said you reminded him that kindness still exists." Emma couldn't speak. Walter stepped closer. "You saved me, Emma," he whispered. "Not with money. With humanity." Tears filled Emma's eyes again. Daniel handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked shakily. "A check," he said gently. "It will cover Tyler's treatment." Emma immediately shook her head. "No, I can't accept this." Walter smiled. "Yes, you can." "But why?" Walter's voice trembled slightly. "Because when I had nothing, you treated me like I mattered." Emma broke down crying as Walter wrapped his arms around her. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. Tyler began treatment the following week. The road wasn't easy, but slowly, his health improved. Color returned to his face. His smile grew stronger. Months later, doctors finally gave them the news they had prayed for. The cancer was in remission. Emma cried harder that day than she had in years. Not from pain. From relief. A year later, Emma stood inside a small community center on Chicago's South Side. A handmade sign above the door read, "Broken but still kind." With help from Daniel and Walter, Emma had opened a support center for struggling families, homeless individuals, and cancer patients. They offered warm meals, job resources, counseling, and hope. Every wall inside the building carried one message. Kindness matters. One snowy evening, a teenage volunteer asked Emma something she would never forget. "How were you still kind when life treated you so badly?" Emma looked around the room. At families eating dinner together. At volunteers laughing while serving coffee. At Walter teaching a young boy how to play chess near the window. Then she smiled softly. "Because pain changes people," she said. "Some become cruel. Others become compassionate. I decided my pain would help me understand people, not hate them." The volunteer nodded quietly. Emma looked out the frosted window at the busy city streets. The world still had selfish people. It still had heartbreak, loss, and loneliness. But it also had kindness. And sometimes, one small act of kindness could save a life you never expected. Maybe even your own. So if you're hurting right now, if life has broken your heart or left scars nobody can see, remember this. You can still be kind. And your kindness might become the reason someone else keeps going. Because broken people often carry the biggest hearts. And even in the darkest moments, kindness still shines brighter than anything else.